Hello and welcome to Obehi podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode. Why don't we just start with a presentation of yourself? To those who are probably see you for the first time, what would you want to say about yourself? Let's start from there.
My name is Mike Uriel Ogbechie. I'm an architect by profession. I had that honor, or whatever you call it, to have been a teenager at the time the Nigerian Civil War was fought. And many years after the war, I thought I should put down my experiences, of so many things that went on at that time, which left indelible marks in my life. And I had told some of the stories, bits and pieces, to relations and friends. And I thought I should put them down, for posterity. That was really what culminated in the writing of the book, Eclipse at Noonday.
Thank you very much for that. Like I always do this podcast, because this podcast is about people. Everyone has a story to tell. That is, of course, a tagline. That we believe that people, every one of us, have our own version of the story. Now, let's start also with you. Let's remain there a little bit. You were young, you were very small when the Nigerian Civil War was fought. Now, before we get to the war, tell me about you. How was you, a young boy, growing up in Eastern Nigeria? What can we learn about you growing up?
Yeah, I was actually born in the northern part of the country, but still as a toddler, my parents relocated to the eastern part of the country, Port Harcourt to be very precise. Growing up in Port Harcourt was a lot of fun because we had, it was a cosmopolitan setting, and we had people from all over the country, and we had a lot of, especially West Africans, people from Ghana, people from Sierra Leone, people from the rest of the subcontinent living amongst us. And everybody felt at home. Growing up, we didn't really have any distinction between somebody coming from the north or somebody who hails from the west and all that. We all grew up, especially the children. But I would say to a large extent too, the adults, we grew up liking each other for what we were and not for where we hailed from. And everybody was his brother's keeper, went to primary school in Port Harcourt, went to secondary school, what happened to be one of the best secondary schools then, because it was an experiment by the Americans. They set up these comprehensive school. They had lecturers, professors from the University of California, Berkeley campus, set up that experiment. So I was one of those who benefited from that experiment. Hitherto, everything had been more tailored towards the British system of education. We, being a former colony of the British until Nigeria's independence in 1960. So when the Americans came with their new system of education, a lot of parents embraced it. and, send their children there. So that was how some of us became beneficiaries of that system. What was peculiar about the system was that it exposed us to a lot of things which hitherto the normal secondary schools, which were popularly known as grammar schools, did not have opportunity of learning. And that singular opportunity was actually what led me to the role I played while the war lasted. So that's the significance of having schooled in that school, the Government Comprehensive Secondary School in Port Harcourt.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, we're not going to dig deeper into those areas, though I would have really loved to, because I always like it when elderly people talk about the past. It's something very rich.
Yeah.
Is that you want to say something?
Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to, you are talking about not digging so much into that past. It is, that school and the role it played in my life, in the lives of some other young people, and the role it played as the war lasted is very significant, because the workshops of the school became arms producing center for the Biafran army. That's actually, yeah. And
that is very vital. So we're going to touch it more there.
Yes, we're going to touch it more then.
I was actually considering the time constraint, because there are different aspects of the conversation that we are going to be touching just now. So since this one touch it in that sense, then we are going to come back to it later, because we're talking of war. We're also going to talk about the weapon. In fact, I've prepared some questions I'm going to ask you there to help the people understand it. Okay, now before we get to the world situation, how did you start to write? How did you get this motivation into writing, documentation? Because you made mention of something before, that you wanted to leave something for posterity. And this is something very powerful, no? That we must leave something behind for other people who are going to come after us. I don't know, maybe 250 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now. The only way we can do that is by documenting our passes. So how did it occur to you, this idea of documentation, of writing?
I have been very interested in literature, literary works. After the Nigerian War, people began to write books about their different experiences and all that. Even Ojukwu himself, who was the leader of the Biafran country, wrote a book too. I mean, so many people. I read, there's this author who wrote the Dogs of War. I can't remember his name now. Lately, he had something about Biafra. There were so many people. And Chimamanda Adichie, wrote something on the Biafran War. Actually, it was after I read her book, which was a work of fiction, that I decided to write my book. Because, I mean, there's a difference between fiction and non-fiction. I wanted to let people really see what the situations actually were from somebody who experienced it firsthand. I wasn't going to tell stories that would be embellished to make them, look interesting. I was going to say it as it was, from my personal experience. And of course, in some of the cases, friends and relations who had experiences who narrated their experiences while the war lasted, and we shared our common feelings and whatever about what was going on. So somehow all those information got ingrained in my brain. I mean, some of the things I still can't forget them. I mean, it's over 50 years now, and I still remember some of the incidents as if they happened just yesterday.
We are going to get to some of this incident just now.
Okay.
One thing I would like to ask you then, of course, as we carry on with the conversation, I'm going to be citing few things from the book, and of course, we are going to be going deeper into the real situation and also the literature of the Nigerian Civil War. It is true that you made mention of the fact that some Nigerians have written about it, but from my point of view, I think we haven't written enough at all about the Nigerian Civil War, because a lot of people passed through some terrible situation during that time. So
Yes.
I think our bookshop should be loaded with this because we need to explain what has happened, really detail everything that has happened, from analysis to point of view to people who have lived the experience. We need to explain it. I think it's an obligation that we own the generation that are going to come after us. They need to know what has happened. They need to really know what has happened. That's what I want to say there.
Yes,
So what
yes.
would be the central message of this book that you have written? Tell us about that. Then we are going to move to some other segment of the argument.
Well, I would say the major message about the book is that war is actually not fun. War is death. I mean, anytime you hear about war, then you are talking about people dying, and it is a very serious issue. So that people don't, the decision to go to war should never be taken lightly. I think that's the central message. Decision to go to war by either party must not be taken lightly. War should be the very last resort in whatever situation.
That is a timely advice. Looking at the situation that
Yes.
we have today in the country, looking at the insecurity in the country, looking at, I don't want to go into systemic discussion today. Let's look at the Nigerian Civil War, because it's a serious situation. This is a country that
Yes.
is 61 years today, okay, in October.
Mhm.
We have a lot of defects, a lot of challenges. So the best way to start resolving that problem is by talking about it. We need to talk about the problems that we have. Now, the first part of this segment in this conversation is the prelude to the war, before the war. What do you
Okay.
remember? What do you remember before the war? Like a country preparing towards war. What happened in those periods? What can you share with us?
I recollect October 1st, 1960. Preparing for it, that was Nigeria's Day of Independence. And everybody was highly elated. We looked forward to it, but then the truth must be told. Before Nigeria gained her independence, signs had begun to appear that all was not well. All was not well for the fact that the political parties then were not just mostly regional based, but they were, tribally based. One dominant party in the northern part of the country, another dominant party in the western part of the country, and another dominant party mostly in the eastern part of the country. And as independence approached, everyone thought it was going to be their people in power. So I think that was when the problem began, that early. Because if we had parties that were all nationally based, it would have been a different kettle of fish. But here we are people who were like fighting for their region, fighting for their tribe. And so the cracks began to appear. So we are not really too surprised when everything blew up to the stage we found it.
Thank you for that also. Yes, that is one of the things that actually is very scary that people should have tried to resolve at the time. And of course, in this sense, we are not going to leave our founding father out from it, because they should have been able to know that the structure they were building, they should have been know upon what they were building it on. Some of them, unfortunately, were very secessionist. They were not they were not nationalist enough, and that seed of immaturity that they sow continued to haunt Nigerian evil till date. So that for the recent years, the administration of Buhari, for example, have been one of the most tribalized in the Nigerian recent history, and this is very dangerous. And I think the Nigerian people, the historians, people like you who are studying, who are reading the signs of time, should be sounding heavy warnings to those in Abuja, because it is not only costly in terms of money, it is costly in terms of where we want to go. Because at the end of the day, after we have fought and destroyed ourselves, that round table that we refuse to go, we will still go back there, but we will not be able to make up for the life that we have lost.
Definitely.
So the question I want to ask you, sir, is why do you think the political parties, like you just make mention of, were sectional and tribal and ethnic based? Why did the founding father not manage to agree on the future or where we were going as a country? Because you cannot build a foundation on the sand. It's going to collapse. They should have known this.
It's true. Well, probably I'm not in any position to answer for any of them. One would have expected, as at that time, there were not too many people who were exposed, and the few of them who were exposed, who were in politics, ought to have agreed to work together. But I think that was where the problem began. They did not really see the need to agree to work together. And so, right from the first general elections, I still remember I was, even when I was in primary school, I still remember all those days. My father will come back and he will buy newspapers, and you hear about mayhem, killings, everything, destruction. All just because maybe a dominant party in one part of the country believes nobody, the other party should not even come to campaign. It was that bad. They should not even come to campaign in their strongholds. And when they did, they burned vehicles, party vehicles, people were killed, and all sorts of things. So the problem began that early. So, for somebody like me, even at that tender age, I knew that something terrible was breeding. It didn't take long before it blew up. It was all that culminated in the first military coup. Those young men then thought, and I still believe, a lot of people condemn them, but then I don't. Even people try to say, okay, they were sectional, and all that. They saw that the country was heading in the wrong direction, and they thought they could come and stem the drift and get the country united, get the political class to work in the same direction. unfortunately, maybe everything they thought about did not work out the way they thought it. And the coup failed. And then there was a counter coup, which finally destroyed the country.
Yes, it finally destroyed the country, and it becomes a chaos, just like a kind of patching it together.
Finally destroyed the country, because it was that counter coup that led to the Civil War, and then every other thing that happened thereafter.
So it will appear to somebody that is listening to us now, or the person who is trying to understand the Nigerian history, that we have actually been patching the system. You know, one thing is to build a house on a solid rock. Another thing is to build it on the sand, and you see that it's falling apart. You are just trying to patch it, put one thing there, put another thing, another rock there, put another stick there, thinking that it will hold. But it's not holding. We can see it. The Nigerian politics is so tribalized, even in 2021. The way we appoint minister is so tribalized. It's not based on who is qualified to do the job. It's based on who do you know. The Nigerian system is so mysterious. It's not based on getting the best to do the job. And this way, the country is not moving forward. And even the next election that we are planning for, we don't know if the Nigerian kingmakers are ready to turn the table. They're just trying to patch it, but it's not going to work like this. So the question really is, now, you say you don't want to blame the generals, the young boys, the Yakubu, the lieutenant, Ogunigue Weapon at the time, who said they wanted to take the system into their hand and correct an error. But they themselves went on and make even, I don't know whether to say a bigger error this time, because the system they tried to correct could not be corrected, and then it led us to bloodshed. So the question I really want to ask you is, where do you think they went wrong?
If I'm to say really, I think the problem of Nigeria requires reset of our mindset. You see, we are so heavily entrenched now. We've gone too far, too deep from what a proper country should be. You know, like I said earlier, when we are growing up, we grew up in a cosmopolitan city where nobody bothered to know where you came from. You were adjudged by who you were, what you could do. You see, we've reached a point now in Nigeria, Mr. A knows Mr. C, who is not from his place, is better qualified, is better equipped to handle a position. But he would rather give it to B, who he has ethnic affiliations with. I'm not really accusing, maybe some parts it is worse with some parts, but that is exactly where we are. And for as long as we keep doing that, we never see the light of day. We must get to a situation where if you really want to have a country that moves forward, then, I mean, it's like having a team. You choose a football team, you choose your best 11 if you want to succeed. You don't choose an 11 made up of one person. Let us have one person from one tribe so that, you know, things will work. And it even becomes worse when you choose 6 out of the 11 out of a tribe that doesn't have it. I mean, that's where we are now. Just because they think it is, they have the muscles, they have the power, they have everything to decide who is to be there. For as long as we keep doing that, Nigeria will keep moving backwards instead of moving forward. That's exactly where we are.
And sometimes moving backward instead of moving forward. Of course, I know the argument can quickly trickle down to other areas, like, for example, our heritage from the British. Because
Yes.
one thing is to be free, another thing is to be given freedom. I think I'm not trying to underrate the effort of the Nigerian founding fathers, those who tried to take the country away from the British, but there was a lot of things that needed to be done. So I don't really think we got independent. We were given independence and we are suffering the consequences of that, because it means, of course, historians will tell us that when you are given independence, you need to sign even agreement that you are going to, you are like a kind of a mini satellite, a mini state responding to higher power, which in this case is the United Kingdom. But if you have taken it by force, because freedom is not granted, it's not something that somebody can give to you like a gift. You need to fight for it. The British needed to have been driven away from Nigeria. And of course, this will take even more years to happen. So that I don't want to believe that we are naive to the situation, just thinking that the founding father were just too blind. No, a lot of mathematics were done. A lot of things went into what we call the Nigerian independence. It's not as simple as it might appear to be. I am not naive to that. But this is what it is today. So we must look for a way to find the solution. So I would like to ask you a humble question. Do you think the war could have been avoided, looking at the situation the way it was and the way it is today?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because we are all aware of the attempt by the Ghanaian head of state, military head of state at that time, to broker peace amongst the disagreeing factions, the federal side led by General Gowon and Ojukwu on the Biafran side. At the end of the discussions in Abri, people thought some solution had been found, and that would have stopped the country from going to war. Unfortunately, from what we are made to understand, when Ojukwu got back to Lagos, with the advice of the British and some Nigerian bureaucrats, all the agreements that were reached in Abri were, thrown overboard. Primarily, Ojukwu had canvassed that the country should be not just a federation, but a confederation, where each region, at that time we had 4 regions, should be able to pilot their affairs. And it was believed that Gowon understood what was being said. But when he got back, he said no, that they have no time agreed on confederation. And I think that's one of the problems Nigeria is still suffering from, where all the power, is placed at the center. And the states are just like, powerless appendages. And every state runs to the federal every month for handouts. And some of that's what is happening. And some of the states are not being productive, and they are not making any attempt to do anything, even when every state, it has improved in Nigeria that every state is naturally endowed. All you need is people to really, even if it is agriculture, there are countries that have nothing, yet they are doing very well. I know about Kenya, where they are earning so much from just planting flowers. People will not believe it. And they earn billions of dollars every year from just selling flowers. We have a lot of places. We have Switzerland, we have Japan. places that don't even have any natural resources, yet they are doing very fine economically. I don't even know why Nigeria, where every state has abundance of arable land to grow whatever, should be depending on, I mean, for how many years now we depend on oil every day. And now oil is dwindling both in reserves and in appreciation by the world. The world is going into other sources of energy. So very soon, maybe we'll be boiling our oil and eating or drinking it. I mean, that's just how bad it is. If only people, will have this kind of decentralization of power from the center, and states are allowed to develop at their own paces, we'll have a healthy competition and the country will move forward. I think that's one of the things lacking in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you more than 100%. And coming to think of that, I will just imagine that the Nigerian government or the Nigerian structure is structured after the United Kingdom or maybe the United States, because sometimes we tend to copy what is happening in the United States. And that would be exactly what Nigerian people are asking for, the autonomy of the states. So that if I don't want to remain in the dark, I should create light. I should be able to generate light.
Yes.
There are state policing in many countries in Europe. There are federal police here. There are more than one type of federal police here, even in Italy, But there are still local police.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are the ones that know you to the ground. They speak your local language if you want to. Because in Italy, for example, of course, they speak Italian, but there are the local languages. They are still Italian language, but they are different. The police that is coming from Rome doesn't know the nitty-gritty of those areas.
Surely.
Just like, for example, in Nigeria, you say you want to send a police officer from Nasarawa to go and police a system in Imo State. Do you know how that system is set up?
But that's what's happening.
And when it comes to the tax, how the tax work, if everything is collected and remitted to the federal, am I supposed to, if I'm a local government chairman, how am I supposed to run my system? Where am I supposed to get the money? So like you said, we do this Father Christmas thing, where the state have to extend their hand to the federal government, please give me money, and from there we give to... It's a stupid form of system. It doesn't exist anywhere. So based on what is the Nigerian system structure, is it like the United Kingdom? Please help me with that. I don't understand where it's coming from.
It's a pseudo American system we are practicing. Because what they have done is they've just, all this cut and join sort of thing. In Nigeria, we claim to have systems. In fact, we have the presidential system that is tailored after the American system and all that. You have the Senate, you have the House of Reps. But that's where it ends. The other things that make that system work, they jettisoned. I mean, you know that in the United States, every state is developing at its own rate. That is why states like California, states like New York, states like Texas are richer than these other small states, here and there. And they admit it. And there is nothing about it. If you want to make your place better, then work harder and see what you can get out of the system. It is not by, condemning everybody to a flat rate or something. It's actually not flat rate because now all the money is sent to the central government and they begin to ask, what's the landmass of your people, your state? What's the population of your state? Even when such populations are inflated and all that. And based on all this, they now begin to allocate money. I mean, lately we've had this problem of VAT, value added tax. There are states in the north who say they are practicing Sharia. You know, they are practicing Sharia, which is a form of Muslim, and they don't drink beer. It's not only that they don't drink beer, they have Hizbah, they call them, you know, the local police or vigilant or whatever. And they go and they destroy people's shops, people's stores, where they have hundreds and thousands of cartons of alcoholic beverages. So there, they don't drink, they don't collect VAT on those alcoholic beverages. But down in the south, the people drink alcoholic beverages, and VAT is collected from those states. And now one of the states went to court and said, how come you don't drink beer, you don't collect VAT on alcoholic beverages? We do. But when we collect these VAT to the central government, disbursement is made and you get part of this VAT, which you refuse to collect. I mean, it sounds stupid to me.
Absolutely.
Very senseless. It sounds very senseless. It shouldn't even be debated. I mean, come to think of it. You don't drink beer, you don't do this, you don't do that, so you don't collect VAT on them. Fine. So forget it. Let the people who drink beer, who collect VAT on beer and whiskey and brandy and whatever, use the VAT they collect from their people who indulge in that kind of lifestyle and develop the thing for the greater good of the people. They should not use it to come and develop your state where you have refused to collect the VAT. The matter is still in court now. We don't know how it's going to end.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little bit offensive. Is that I think we just we delegate our power to stupid people to run. And then they run the system stupidly. Then every Nigerian is appear that we are all stupid.
That is it.
We should apply common sense in most of the things that we do.
Yes, definitely.
They make Nigeria appear like big babies, meaning adults that are actually baby. We haven't grown. Now, let me go a little bit again to the story that we are targeting today, which is the Nigerian Civil War and your experience. So tell me, the war has started now. Where were you?
Yes, fine. That's why I said, the school comes into, play. As the war began in 1967, of course, all the schools were closed and students sent home. The Biafran army that were in the engineering, Biafran army engineers got together. They knew there was this blockade, there was sea blockade, air blockade, and all that. There were no land routes into Biafra. So getting arms was really a big problem. And so they began to think early enough how arms and ammunition could be produced in Biafra. So Port Harcourt was one of the areas that was not affected immediately by the war. And they began to manufacture weapons. They began to manufacture bombs, grenades, and all sorts of things, whatever that could be used in war that could easily be done. Because we had a good metal workshop, with foundry, lathe machines, milling machines, drilling machines, and so on, was turned into, an arms production center. And that was how I came into it. Because a few of us students who have now been sent home, because my parents lived in Port Harcourt, a few of us were contacted and they wanted more hands. So we joined the Biafran Army Engineers in the production of arms and ammunition.
All right, I'm going to remain on this Biafran weapon again for some time. The production of weapon, of course, it requires some technicality that not everybody just know how to do. No, of course, like the saying go, necessity is the mother of invention. And of course, since you have experience of those areas, you will help us to explain some other aspect of it when it gets to that just now. So how did people manage to get this knowledge to be able to produce a weapon? I know it's a necessity, it becomes very important. You must do it or you perish. So how did they manage to get this knowledge?
What really happened was that there were these engineers and technicians. Some of them, prior to the war, they had this Nigerian Defense Industrial Corporation, NDIC, which was based in Kaduna. And they sent out some bright engineers and technicians. Some of them were trained in Germany and some other places. So of course, when they got back, and there were these lecturers in the university, the only university then in the eastern part of the country, the University of Nigeria. Now, chemists and so on, they got together. And that was how, put heads together. And then they began to see how, weapons could be fabricated locally to save the non-available foreign exchange. And of course, even when you had the foreign exchange to buy the weapons, how do you bring them in? The only corridor into Biafra territory was by air. And the Nigerian fighters were always looking out for, these cargo planes that were bringing in anything into Biafra, and they had to fly at night and land in near darkness. It was a miracle. We didn't have many more crashes than we did because a lot of those planes crashed actually.
All right, I was looking at this this weapon just now, this machine. I think that should be a war machine that is I think available in museum in
Umuahia.
Exactly.
In Abia State now.
All right, can you explain to us a little bit because you look very robust and tell us something about this?
Yeah, actually, the basic thing is that when you have an idea about something, it starts in its crudest form. Like Biafra produced the flamethrowers and so on. These were actually some of the things that were done there. We are using already available materials. Say, for instance, converting a tractor or something, give it an outer shell with an outer shell that is, has been metal that has been hardened so that it is bulletproof and in some cases bomb-proof. And you just put them together and out comes an ugly-looking contraption, but which does the job. You get the point? Absolutely. Those are the sort of things. Yeah, because all you want is, at the end of the day, you want something that does a particular function. However it's shaped, it's immaterial. So those are the kind of things, production of grenades, production of bombs. You must have heard about the Ogunigue and all that. So all those things were done out of, they said necessity is the mother of invention. They needed to have something to fight back with. And so these things were being manufactured as people brought ideas, experimented on them. We had casualties while these things were being produced. In my unit, I recall 2 young soldiers died while they were working on grenades and all that. So we had such things, but it didn't stop people from going on. These were soldiers who were previously Nigerian soldiers, not like the new recruits, when the war began. These were people who were already in the army before the problems began.
This is our history, and we must examine it. In fact, we need to go deep into these war tools and really study it very well, because you see, somehow they make us believe that in this world we can always get everything from the outside. No, it is not true. You can't always get everything from the outside. Now, look at a country like Nigeria with its size, with its military. We don't really depend on ourselves in terms of defense. We need other people to defend us. Even though we can actually do a lot, we can do far ahead of what we are doing
buy
today.
Everything of our scarce foreign exchange. You have to import virtually everything. I think that was one of the biggest errors they made at the end of the war. For those of us who wanted to stay back with the military workshops and all that, they would have been encouraged. For those of us who were in school, of course, our desire was to get back to school and continue with our education, which I personally did. But it was like throwing away the baby with the bath water, because these things were done in Biafra. So destroy it all. Which didn't make any sense. They would have put those people together, gotten some more people to join them, and maybe by today it would have been one sort of revenue generation for the country.
Absolutely. And also as a way to demonstrate that we can protect ourselves. Because like I said, if a war were to break out in Nigeria today, we ask for AK-47. That is something coming from somewhere, no? Because
of course,
I think the only people that are actually deserve to be in peace are those who are ready for war. Because if you're not ready for war, then whatever you have can be taken by any other person. And this is because the world we live in is an imperfect world. You can't be eating chocolate and biscuit and thinking that you are free. No, it is not possible. First of all, you have to be free. And secondly, you need to protect your freedom. But since we never really fought for our freedom was given, it was given on condition. And those who gave it to us on condition continue to determine how it works here. So unfortunately, we need to be free first before we can decide how we want to govern ourselves. Sorry to just put it in a very crude way like that. Okay, now look at the United States, look at England, look at Germany. They will be able to provide their food, provide their weapon, provide everything for themselves. The same for France. That is why they are respected in the world, not because they are Europeans. Sorry, it is not true. It's because they can protect themselves. How do you protect yourself if you don't even have the minimum necessity to do that?
You don't even have the basics. The minimum is terrible.
So, having said that, look at you will help us to explain this one, please. The Ogunigue weapon. If Nigeria, for example, have invested on it, how can it have benefited the Nigerian military today? I like what Gowon said, no? Honestly, I like it that this is a war of no victor, no vanquish. But is that really what Nigeria, is that really what we are, how we are treating the situation? Because if that is how we are treating the situation, that this was a friendly war, a war inside the country, an internal struggle,
Yeah.
a civil war, therefore. So why did we not do anything about the weapon they invented? That is the question.
Well, I guess all that blame must go to go on because he was still in power 5 years after the war. You know, if he had put certain policies in place, probably the people after him would have continued. But though he came out with no victor, no vanquish, and all that, in reality, nothing was done in that direction. People went their different ways and began to do some other things. And that was how that dream died. Because I was very aware there were so many things going on. There were a lot of researches going on at that time. Even with all the scarcity, with all the war going on, there was a lot of research going on. You know, how to improve on imported weapons if they manage captured weapons from the Nigerian side. They take them, they strip them, and I mean, that was actually what Biafra was doing. Get these weapons from sometimes they capture weapons or the few, and they strip them, get a few of them, and they began to study them. How were these things made? Even if you can't make them look very fine, I mean, just do something. I mean, after all you need is something to explode and send out shrapnel and kill or maim people. And I mean, for as long as you achieve that purpose, no matter how crude your weapon looks, it has served the purpose, and that's all you need.
But I don't. I still don't understand why we never improve on those material. That is really the point. Because at the end of the day, the knowledge becomes the Nigerian knowledge, no? Because you cannot destroy the knowledge. We are looking at
Of course.
how we can move, how we can advance, no? Because knowledge is just like water, in that it is neutral. If you know something, it is not evil or good. It is what you do with it that make it
It's
good
true.
or bad.
Good or ill, yes.
So why do we have to do away with the knowledge that we have gathered? Okay, now I said that because if we look at any other country in the world, any other significant country, whether you are looking at the Chinese, the Japanese, even the United States or UK, they have always built on their knowledge. They never let it, because if you cut it, you are going to start from level 1 again. Take for
It's true.
example, the development of the railway, and now we have the super speed railway. But take a look
Yes.
at the super speed railway and look at the railway that was designed before. They are basically the same. They are governed by the same logic. Now, if the Biafra were able to create this weapon and we cut it, it means that knowledge is lost. So we need to start from zero again. How does it work like that? If every other person is learning based on their past, where you reach now, for you to go on, you need to continue from there. Now, our own will destroy everything so that we don't even have where to start from. What is the logic? I don't understand that.
That's the irony of our situation. I think somehow we've always had the wrong leaders, the wrong people in power. Even if the person at the helm of affairs means well, if you surround yourself with, people who are no good, who are not thinking good, who are not seeing beyond their noses, you end up the way we are now. The problem, I think the greatest problem of Nigeria is that people go into politics because they think it's the quickest avenue to become rich. Most wealthy people, the so-called billionaires in Nigeria, have their hands in the Nigerian pie. That is the truth. There are just a few people who have been able to make their money outside the government circles. Most other people have depended on the goodwill of their friends, relations in government to become rich. That's what is happening. And because of that, they want to protect the status quo. They think it should be protected because why not? You don't want other people to get into the system and displace you. Your friends, your relations, your tribesmen, and whatever are always the people benefiting. And once they are benefiting, you're okay. Meanwhile, there is abundance of poverty in the country. There are millions of people in this country, as we speak now, who cannot afford 1 square meal a day. One. I'm not talking about 3 square meals a day. People who do not have shelter, people who have virtually nothing. So, what are the resultant effects? Now, armed robbery, kidnapping, all sorts of vices are on the increase. Now everybody is scared. You're scared to go on a road. I mean, I remember many years ago, I could drive alone in my car for only God knows 7 hours, 8 hours, and I'm not scared of anything. But these days, you dare not try it. In fact, every town, every village in this country now is infested with kidnappers and robbers. There are, illegal guns in the hands of all sorts of groups, all sorts of individuals. In fact, it is by the grace of God that some of us are still alive because the whole country has become something else.
Unfortunate.
It's just unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate.
All right. Now, I'm going to quote you a line from your book so I can see a kind of, so that I can ask you something relating to that. Now, I read a line from the book, which is, I'm taking it from chapter 1, page 2. Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, the military governor of the eastern region of Nigeria, seemed to have the solid and unequivocal support of majority of the people within the region. And so was he not moved to back down? I like that part very well. I like the support. So how did that support play out throughout the war that you know of?
There was no doubt that the people supported Ojukwu. They were bound to. Majority of the people did. Because we are all living witnesses to the pogrom that went on, especially in the northern part of the country, against the people from the southeastern part of the country. And, it built up a lot of anger. The people were angry. When trains came from the north bearing dead bodies and dying persons, in coaches, the people were bound to be angry. And these were defenseless civilians. Their only crime was that they came from a certain part of the country. Initially, they were killing soldiers from the eastern part of the country, but eventually it became everyone, anybody who came from that part of the country. And so with that kind of scenario, the people were angry. If they had their way, everybody wanted to be armed and move into, especially that part of the country where their people had been killed and maimed, and retaliate. That was the mood of the nation.
In 2015, if I'm not mistaken, I did a documentary which I titled Pan-Africanism, Testing Idea on Reality. And then, of course, in this documentary, I made mention of also the Nigerian Civil War and a number of other wars in Africa, which actually are war for other people, but we are the one fighting and we are the victims of it. Sometimes I think, anyway, based also on our explanation before, that because we didn't drive away the British, we signed a kind of contract of independence, which make it very stupid to start with, because they make us to sign a contract, and what it did, they still run the system, but it appeared as if we are the one running the system, but it's a very complex situation. Politics is a complex situation. Is it possible that somehow somebody have benefited from this war, while we, the Nigerian people, so to say, just ended up crucifying ourselves in the name of being Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo? I'm asking for your personal opinion.
Yeah, I think so, definitely, because like in my book, I mentioned something very strange happened. I was young, but not too young. Something strange happened. Because I understood the world politics then. Those were the Cold War days when you had the West pitched against the East, the then Soviet Union, Britain, United States, largely on the West, and the Soviet bloc to the East. But the Nigerian Civil War brought these two parties on one side. Yeah. I mean, if you go through my book, you see where I really wrote about it in depth. For the first time, I mean, the trend then was that anywhere in the world, then what was happening in the 60s, the 50s, if Britain supported a party, the Soviet Union just took, just went the other way and supported the other group. I mean, Angola is a case in point. There are so many, even into the 70s and so on. But for the first time in the Nigerian Civil War, Britain and the Soviet Union fought, aided the same side, the federal government. And it was most unbecoming. It became obvious that somebody was benefiting something from somewhere, because all that time, the oil thing was hot and everybody wanted a piece of the cake. So one would have expected that if Britain was on the Nigerian side, the Soviet Union would have just come heavily for whatever it was worth and supported Biafra, but they never did. They supplied all the MiG fighters, the Ilyushin 28 bombers, and all sorts of things. And, Britain was busy supplying APCs and all the other weapons. And of course, the AK-47 from the Soviet bloc was the order of the day. And then the Egyptians were flying the MiG planes, which they had done in their 67 war with Israel. So everybody was flabbergasted We didn't know it could ever happen, that Britain and the Soviet bloc could be supporting the same side, and nobody found anything wrong with it. Anyway, but it did happen.
It requires people like you and many other intelligent Nigerians to look very deeply into what is happening, because somehow we might just be dancing to somebody else's music. And if that is the case, it means we can kill ourselves for as long as it helps them to take away the resources, and it helps them to make sure that we remain where we are today. And of course, this part, we have to also blame part of it to our founding fathers for their ingenuity or for their inability to see where the country was going. And of course, also to our fault, because we are human beings, we should play our role in trying to make sure that things function. But again, the war, the causes of the war, and the real war itself is more than meet the eyes. There is something deeper than what it actually played out. Yeah. But of course, we need to tell the story. Now, just like the Nigerian Civil War, you can also talk of the Sierra Leonean War, you talk of maybe the genocide in Rwanda. That is the aftermath of the war, the after, which is the healing process. And this is where I see that both the Nigerian government and the Eastern Bloc, this time, the leaders of the Igbo people of Nigeria, have they done enough to heal the wound? Because people were actually hurt in this process. A lot of people died. Do you think that both the Nigerian government, in this case, the federal government of Nigeria, and then the Eastern Bloc, all the Igbo people put together, have you seen them do their job in healing the process? Because like Gowon has said, this really is an internal crisis, and it is our duty to heal this wound.
Yeah, I think this is where it's actually the crux of the matter. Because I remember some years ago, they set up the Oputa panel to, the idea of the Oputa panel, just like what you had in South Africa, was to find who wronged who at what point and see how we can have a reconciliation and then the way forward. But it's unfortunate that that panel was another waste of resources, because what they recommended and all that never saw the light of day. One would have thought, like some people have tried to do, let's have this national conference and agree on certain things. I mean, the truth, we cannot hide it. Like our first national anthem said, though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. We must first of all admit that we are not one people. We are different. But being different does not mean that we cannot work together. In Britain, you have the English, the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish. But I mean, they are not killing each other because they are different nationalities. We should be able to say, fine, you're Yoruba, you're Igbo, you're Hausa. Let us fashion our own homegrown method of running this, our country. We should not be looking at any country while we're doing that. This is our problem. Let us see how we can solve our problem. And maybe we'll come out with something and say, okay, fine, we've always had this problem of who is going to be president, who will be this. Like a lot of people said, if at the central, devolution of powers, you make the president less consequential and the power goes to the states, you find that there won't be too much attraction in who wants to be president. Because now the situation,
like you said before,
yeah,
because those in charge, those who are running their criminal system, are the one that we are expecting to change the system so that it doesn't favor them anymore, it becomes almost impossible.
yeah.
Then, how do we do this? What is the solution? Because Nigeria, I repeat again from the beginning of the podcast, is in a really serious situation at the moment. How do we find a solution?
I think the solution still lies in a conference table. We must all sit down and agree on the way forward. You see, the problem now is that things are being imposed on people, and most people resist any form of imposition. Only school children accept imposition. You must come to class at 8 a.m. You must eat your lunch at 12 noon. You must do this at your siesta. I mean, most adults will say no to that. They don't want you to dictate to them. If we sit down and we agree, then it's binding on us to stick to the tenets of the agreement. But it's not for you to sit down. You're running a system. People don't even understand what is going on. That is the truth.
So this country, we have actually experimented different things. But anyway, Nigeria is really peculiar in one sense that, like many other countries, like Congo, anyway, maybe it appears that it's degenerating to that now with our democracy that is, I don't know, maybe to use the words of fella, democracy, where we are running a very crazy system. Even though a lot of coup have happened in Nigeria, it have always lasted for a very short period of time in the like of some other African country. I don't know whether this is for good or bad, but what really I want to say is that we have tested the military regime. We have tested democracy before, and now we have it. We can't say we are ignorant of everything. Again, I am not naive to the fact that there are some other people who are interested in controlling the Nigerian system. There is no two ways about that. That is the way it is. That is how power works. We have lost the war, if we even accept that we have fought any war at all. So we are prisoners of war, looking at the whole of Africa put together. So until we fight and win, we are not in the position to call the shot. That is the plain truth. So that is why we must fight. But of course, fight doesn't mean taking the gun and be shooting.
Yes, I understand.
We must educate ourselves to understand what is going on. And when we do, we must be able to shape our system, our situation in a way that it must favor us. So, like in the case of Nigeria, for example, where we don't understand what is going on, we are suggesting we need to sit down and talk. Now, this sit down and talk, let's even look at it from a different angle. Say we are not a republic. Say this has happened like 250 years ago, 300 years ago. If there is a conflict between one kingdom and another kingdom, or within a kingdom, the solution usually to sit down and talk and dialogue. So, why is the federal government of Nigeria afraid of this dialogue, what you are referring to as a conference? Why are they afraid of it? They are governing the people, and the people say, let's talk. Why are they afraid of that talk?
In fact, they are in the best position to answer that question. I think it's just fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown. Somebody says, we've disagreed. Could we sit down and talk and forge a way forward? And you're scared to talk because you think that whatever is going to be the outcome of this discussion will not be in your favor. I don't understand it. I think that's where we are now. You don't even want to talk. I mean, so what else do you want? All this imposition will not go on forever. That's what we have now. You're forcing people, whether you like it or not, it has to be this way. And the people are resisting it. It's natural. It's natural. if the people agree, representatives of the people agree, this is the way we want to go. That's why we don't seem to be making any headway.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask you something. What do you think? Do you think that because Nigeria is really what to call it a perilous time, a dangerous time at the moment, no? Both from the point of view of economy, security, to many other things, no? Do you think we will be in this position today if we managed to avoid the war years ago?
My answer to that would be that if we had agreed on the discussions, like I said, the discussions held and the way forward, probably if we had gone that way, we would have avoided the war. And Nigeria would have been a lot better for it. The regions would have developed at their own pace. You know, each region would have advanced at its own pace. And at the end of the day, probably all of us would have been happier for it. But it never happened. We lost that golden opportunity.
We lost that. And this is what we have now.
Yeah.
So, personally, speaking from your personal experience, what would you say have been the effect of the war on you, personally speaking?
First and foremost is that, like every young person then who was in school, I lost 3 precious years of my life. You know, educationally, I lost 3 years. I lost friends. I lost relations. And I mean, so many other things. And you find that there are some of those effects that are really lifelong. I mean, you never recover from them, which is very true. You never recover from them because if an event happens now, I mean, some people lost limbs. Some of them are still alive. Probably, if not for the war, they would have had all their limbs complete. Some people became blind and they are still alive. Some of us are more fortunate. We didn't have any of that, except that we are set back educationally. We lost uncles, you know, cousins, friends, and so on. And for all your life, you keep remembering. I still remember a lot of my friends who were very close, who were very dear to me. And I don't feel fine, you know, when I remember. Or I remember some incidents while the war lasted. And for those of us who are religious, we just say it was just God. I was in a lot of situations where I could easily have died, you know, but somehow I survived. And that is it.
So what would you say was the most dangerous moment in the war? Because, you know, the war now, it appeared also as a game, no? Because you are playing it, you are continuously playing it, and it's going on. The only difference from war and a game is that people are losing their life. You just see your loved one die, and this is real, unlike the game.
Yes.
So,
unlike a game.
What do you say? What can you say was the most dangerous moment in this game of life?
Like I said, I was working with the Biafran army engineers, you know, what was the name we were called then? They had the name for the group. And, you know, as the war lasted, the Biafran territory was shrinking because the Nigerian army kept overrunning towns and so on. I think my dangerous moment was when we had to go to a place close to Mahia to retrieve some machines. And unknown to us, the Nigerian soldiers had already occupied the place. And we arrived there at midnight, and we came with, trucks, all these low beds, and we had to move those lace machines. They were giant lace machines onto the low bed trucks and then drive them out of the territory. Even the army commander, because the local army commander in the place, the infantry division, when we were going in, told us that they were not in control of that area and they could not guarantee our safety and advised that we had better not go there. But when, because our own commanders in our own unit had asked us under the pain of death that those machines must not fall into the enemy hands. And we went in, and thank God we successfully retrieved them under gunfire, under artillery bombardment, but we were able to make it out in safety. That was like my most scary moment while the war lasted. And I thank God that I'm alive to tell this story.
It's powerful. And now, that enemy you were just referring to are now your fellow countrymen. Now we are going to use the words of General Gowon again. No victor, no vanquish.
Vanquished.
Okay, so we are neighbors, we are friends. Now, you tell me, when you sit down your children, your son, your daughters, and you tell them the story of Nigeria, of the Biafran War, of your experience, and maybe somehow a word like love for your country comes to your mind, how do you break down all this to them in a way that they can understand that they will build one Nigeria?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing is that I let them understand that what happened and belongs to the past. That was as a result of a disagreement that we actually went to war. But those days are past, and if we, the parents, have accepted the rest of the people as our brothers once again, our children are bound to do the same. Now they have friends from cutting across all the various tribes and ethnic groups. So I don't really think it has affected our children negatively. No, it has not. I might not be speaking for every parent, but for my children, definitely. One of my daughters, her best friend, is from one of the other tribes. So it is. We have come to accept that the war has ended. We are reconciled to be our brothers' keepers once again. And that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that, sir. I know that is a hard question. I know. I'm a human being. And when we are called upon to tell our story, we also call upon to be sincere to the story and to the feeling that we have. Because it is real. Upon the story that we tell, because I think this is what makes us actually different from every other living thing on earth, our ability to tell story. And we really must keep on telling stories and also be sincere in the kind of story we tell, because it have consequences. I really thank you for the way you tackled that. When you see the like of Nnamdi Kanu, and all the story that is going around today with the Biafra agitation, what kind of conversation do you have with your maybe fellow elder in relation to what can possibly happen in line with the agitation of Nnamdi Kanu and other people?
Yeah. Actually, this agitation for Biafra did not start with Nnamdi Kanu. We've had people like Owazurike who had Masob, what did you call it? Movement for the actualization of Biafra and so on. When I see some of the young men, I try to tell them something. When you're agitating for what you think is your right, do not reduce it to war, because war is a very serious affair. I think the two things ought to be separated. Agitation for whatever you want your people. I mean, what's the genesis of it all? I think the genesis is that people like Nnamdi Kanu have only used, the feelings of the people, the ill feelings of the people towards the government is what he has built on. If the successive governments have been treating, especially the Igbos, equitably, if they have been treating them equitably, and somebody rises and says, oh, we want Biafra this, people might not even listen to you. That is the truth of the matter. They might not listen to you. But when you have set situations that indicate that a group of people is being marginalized, and somebody comes and tells you, these guys are marginalizing us, you're bound to buy into it, isn't it? And I think that's what is really happening. If Igbos have been treated fairly and equitably, nobody is going to come and tell them. I mean, nobody wants to go and die or whatever. Nobody wants to carry placards and confront Nigerian police or Nigerian army that will not obey the international rules of engagement with demonstrators and begin to shoot you. It will only be a madman. You see, sometimes people are pushed to the wall and they just say, well, I mean, am I really alive? How can I say I'm alive? I don't have a job. I don't have food to eat. I don't have shelter. I don't have anything. I mean, even if I die, I die. I mean, that's the kind of mindset I've seen with some of the young men. I've had, occasion to interact with some of the young men, and some of them just think there is nothing in this system for us. There's nothing. And especially when somebody is telling them, you see, if we succeed, everybody will be fine, everybody will be doing well. I mean, it might never be so. But because the system they are in has not treated them well, they would rather believe the one that says, if we find ourselves here, it's all going to be El Dorado. That's what is going on.
Thank you for that again. You see, this is very important, I think in the country, in Nigeria, elderly people need to come out and begin to speak the truth that they know. I don't say this from might be the absolute truth in the universe, but the one that you know, say it. Because the young Nigerians want to know. They want to know what is going on. They want to know what has gone on. This Nigeria we are talking about belongs to them. It doesn't belong to one Aboki or one chief in Igbo land, one Aboki in Kaduna, or one chief in Akure. This Nigeria belongs to all of us, belongs to our children. We owe them the truth, all the truth that we know. They will decide how to run it. Because it is true, we can criticize Nigeria, criticize most of the African people that were free in 1960, just before then or after then. But really, in the story of nationhood, it takes a lot of years to build a nation. It doesn't take 60 years to build a nation. It takes many hundreds of years. But of course, we can keep on building if we are not taking one step forward and taking it back again, and then forward and then back again. In that case, we are not going anywhere. So everything that is happening today in Nigeria is part of the process. And like you said, it's not going to remain like this forever. So what would you suggest? What would you suggest to people like Nnamdi Kanu? Because it's not only Nnamdi Kanu that want their people to be free from the country. There are other people too.
Yes.
But one thing remains to be clarified for many Nigerians, some of you that are listening to us now, that those thieves that are running Nigeria, they are not running it only for the Hausa or for the Yoruba or against the Igbo people. They are thieves because they are thieves. And they are running it against every Nigerians. They are the evil people that need to be removed. They are the evil people that need to be defeated. And these people are not just the Yoruba or the Hausas. There are also the Igbo people among them.
Yes.
So we must look for a way to sound it very clear to the young Nigerians that in the liberation of the Nigerian people, there is nothing like the ethnic line. Those ethnic lines are only there to deceive the people. We must be able to decode the system so that we can free the country. What do you say to those kind of people who are taking advantage of the imperfection in the system to create their own system? Because what we need is not just to free a certain section. We want to free the whole of the country.
Well, I think the truth told is that no slave master wants to let the slave go free. And because he's the beneficiary of the system, it is the slaves or some other people who are equally powerful as the slave master who can prevail on the slave master to let the slaves free. That is the situation of Nigeria. It is either the people, and you see, there are so many things going wrong. I mean, it's, first of all, you can't even change the system because it has become almost impossible. Every election cycle, you hear about, oh, the young, they want the youth to take over and all that, and they never do. It's not because people don't understand that it is time to change from what we have to what it ought to be. But somehow they are in control of all the, paraphernalia of ascendance into government. And they make it very impossible. They make it impossible for the young ones to come to power. I mean, people in their late 70s, people in their, are still aspiring to be president of Nigeria. People who do not even know how to use, apart from picking up their phone and answering a call, maybe, they don't even know how to. But they want to, they insist on being there. even in this digital system, they want to be in control. What are they fighting for? They are fighting to preserve what they have been able to steal to this day. Because it's the things they have stolen from the system. Some of them 30 years, 40 years ago, until they got into government, had absolutely nothing. They were worth nothing. But now they are billionaires from the system. And so how would they want the system to change? The system might decide to probe them or even jail them or whatever. So they will do everything in their power to make sure that they don't change this system.
I like that. And absolutely,
Yeah.
I believe you. In
They
fact,
don't want the system to change.
I think that is why I was saying before that if we are expecting those who are benefiting from the system to change the system, then we can wait
It will
forever.
never work.
It will never
Yeah, we
change.
can wait forever. It will never change.
But it doesn't depend on them. You know, I think I've used this analogy before. When somebody takes a cane and continue to flog you, it doesn't depend on the person if you really want it to stop. It depends on you. Because to the person who is flogging you, he might be enjoying it. But what about you? Are you enjoying it? If you're not enjoying it, then do something. Okay, this might be very simplistic. What I mean really is that this is a responsibility for all of us. We might not be able to start a revolution, but maybe it's enough for us to say the truth we know. Like, for example, you are doing. You see, you are somewhere in Port Harcourt, you have written a book. I am hundreds of kilometers, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, and that book is having a positive effect on me. I think that is what you need to do. That is what I need to do. That is what all of us need to do to help to become the little candle in the dark. Not by simply saying, everybody is the same. Everybody is not the same. Not every Nigerian, not even every Nigerian politician that is a criminal. So we must look for a way, because like I said before, this is a game. We must try and make an effort to understand the rules of the game so that we can change it from the inside. We cannot change it from the outside. We must look for a way to change the system because it is not working for us. So now I want to go back again because I believe that the Nigerian Civil War had a very huge effect on the Nigerian nationhood, on where we are going.
Probably I would say some people were not even happy with Gowon's stance of no victor, no vanquished. They would have wished that those of us who lost should all have been killed. Because some of them I don't really want to believe in my heart that they've really accepted everybody as their brother since, the war ended. Because they say that action speaks louder than words. It is by your actions. Some of them, and I think maybe the Nigerian is a different species of human beings. Yeah, and I want to say that because if we are not a different species, how come? How many? Look at what is happening in Rwanda. Rwanda we're talking about just the other day. And the people have forgiven each other and they have come together. They are putting their best 11 forward. And the country has become a showpiece. Why are we not doing the same in Nigeria? Even when you know that I am better than your brother, you would rather have your brother or your kinsman or whatever do a shoddy job. And of course, when he does a shoddy job, it is the whole country that suffers. But you don't care. because you're protected, you're getting what you want, you're grabbing, and all that. And the entire country suffers for it. Everybody suffers for it. And that's where we are.
Now, before I ask you the last question, which is going to be a kind of recommendation on how we can probably resolve this problem, even though it's a complex situation, looking at state, looking at Nigeria as it is really complex. But somehow, we are the one that built the system as human being, I mean. So we should be more complex than the system that we build. Is there any part of your book, maybe a paragraph that you would like to read for us, so that those who are listening to you, they can have a taste of this book? Because I find it to be highly valuable. Please do.
Let me see. Yeah. In fact, there is a part I would like to read. It has to do with the relationship with both armies while the war lasted, while the war was ongoing. It's in chapter 29. Things got to a point where everyone began to feel that the federal troops, having thrown their best punches and having been absorbed by the Biafran forces, that there was some sort of lethargy had set in within the federal ranks. Biafran soldiers began to talk about Biafra having survived, and that what was of utmost importance then was only individual survival. Like it was being said then in Pidgin English, Biafra don't survive. Now individual survival will remain. It actually became a saying among soldiers, but nothing could have been further from the truth. The federal forces had a slogan of, to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done, and they were out to ensure nothing short of that. That period of flood had occurred after the disastrous attempt to capture Onitsha and then Nnewi, that resulted in the destruction of 102 assaulted vehicles and possibly hundreds of Nigerian troops. After a while, they had shifted their focus southward and had attempted to capture Uguta, which was in close proximity to the only outlet of Biafra, the airport, to the outside world, Duli Airport. So let me just stop there.
Please, thank you so much.
Yeah, so, at that point, but it got to a point, it's still down the something. When some form of camaraderie developed between Nigerian soldiers and Biafran soldiers. And the soldiers in their trenches, the Nigerian soldiers were being well fed. They were even having beer brewed specially for them and all that. We'll invite Biafran soldiers to come over to their trenches and drink beer and eat food. It happened, real life story. And they will go over and drink beer, eat some food, and return to their trenches. And probably 2 days after, hostilities will resume and they begin to shoot each other again, and people began to die. But you see, what that showed was that maybe somewhere deep down in the hearts of these soldiers, these people are really my brothers, we shouldn't be killing each other. So when they found opportunity to do good, they did it. Otherwise, one would have expected, maybe they will give them poisoned food, or they will give them poisoned, alcoholic beverages, but they didn't do any of such things. They came and they talked normally and cracked jokes, and they went back to their trenches.
That must be a testament to our humanity.
Yes, it's really a testament to our humanity. Nobody believed such a thing could have happened, but it did happen. It did happen. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't all, there were some ugly aspects of the war, you know. People did terrible things, you know. Even soldiers were captured and buried alive and all sorts of, you know, terrible things. But it was not all bad every time. Some people still had some modicum of humanity in them. And when the chance presented itself, they exhibited it while the war lasted.
Thank you so much for that. And upon that, we must remember what has now become a national item, that this war is a war among friends, among family, among brothers.
Yes.
So we, as a country, we must look for a way to outgrow it. We must bring in policy that decreases this tension of ethnicity. Because as a country, we must look for the best among us to serve us. If there is agitation every here and there, it's a testament of the failure of the central system. That central system must look for a way to make sure that every Nigeria counts. I think we have the possibility of able to build upon ourselves and we can survive. So what will be your final statement here?
My final statement will be that I'll be talking to the powers that be, that there is still a window of opportunity to unite us together if only they will listen to the advice of a lot of people. You know, a lot of people are beginning to lend their voices. Let us go back to the conference table. Every group that feels injured, every group that feels marginalized, let us all come together and let us thrash out all these issues. And we'll find out that maybe by the time we finish and begin to apply what we have agreed upon, all these agitations and tensions and criminality all over the country will come to an end or will dissipate gradually. That would be my advice to them.
Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate that. It has been a pleasure on my part. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening and talk to you in the next episode.